On tonight's Jack Hammer Show, I will be joined by So Real Suneil of So Real Sports Talk TV, and we're going to discuss what Trey Lance could put up in 2022, as well as is Deebo Samuel really on the trade block? Hey, everybody, it is Tuesday night, which means it's time for 49ers Throwback here on the Jack Hammer Show. I'm Jack Hammer of the Santa Rosa Press Democrat, and as always on Tuesday, with me today is So Real Suneil from So Real Sports Talk TV. How you doing tonight, Suneil?
Doing fantastic, my man. That was a sick intro. I liked it. I was hoping for when Deebo was doing the gritty that it went into Merton Hanks's celebration with the head snapping and all that kind of stuff. That would have just put it over the top, but it was fire what was there so far.
Hey, it's perfect for the 49ers Throwback Show too, right? We got a little bit of the new, we got a little bit of the old. Trey Lance to Jerry Rice, Joe Montana to Deebo Samuel. It's perfect for this show in particular.
But still, no 49er has topped celebration dance more than the Merton Hanks. Merton Hanks' celebration dance is the best celebration dance of any 49er, in my opinion, so far.
No, you're right. The chicken dance or whatever they used to call it with the neck and everything. I couldn't. If I tried to do that right now, I'd probably be out on skip
IR,
for
right?
2 weeks. Yeah, for sure, with a whiplash.
Yep.
But I know. For tonight, we wanted to take a look. We're going to basically be looking at some numbers going into 2022. Some things. The 49ers need to be able to reach these levels in order to make it to the Super Bowl here this season. We'll also get into a little bit as far as Deebo Samuel, Trey Lance, like I said. We'll look back at Trey Lance's numbers in 2022, what those could be. And then we'll get into a little bit of discussion on a 49ers receiver of the past along with the 49ers current receiver and see which one is better. So to kick us off for tonight, let's just jump into it with the defense. Does the 49ers defense need to be top 5, and let's say in points scored, in order for the 49ers to reach the Super Bowl here in 2022?
So top 5. So last year, do you remember what they finished for in that category? I know overall they were 7th, but I don't know about points scored where they actually finished off.
They finished off 9th.
9th. Okay. So I feel like most of their categories were anywhere from 3rd to 9th in that range. They finished off as far as that. Top 5 in points scored. So the key word is need, right? So that means if they aren't that, they're going to be a failure and or not reach their highest impact. And for me, it's not about just reaching a Super Bowl, Jack, because they've done that, right? It's about, are they going to be able to take that next leap, which is win a Super Bowl? And so for me, I'm judging it based off of that. And if they do want to win a Super Bowl, I do think they need to be top 5. Their defense needs to be top 5. And the reasons why I'm saying that, Jack, is because this offense, at least last year, and obviously the offense is going to be much different because there's a new quarterback and, some new pieces along the offensive line and whatnot. So it's not going to be exactly the same. However, they are an offense that struggles to score throughout the flow of the game. And when they do score, it seems to be points in bunches, and it seems to be a lot more in the second half than the first half, and usually in 2-minute, 4-minute type offensive settings versus just through the scheme and just the flow of the game. So for that to be the case, you would assume that with Trey Lance, there is going to be some ups and downs, being his first time as a full-time starter, and overall just getting used to that. So with that being said, to keep the 49ers team consistently competitive where they are going to be one of the top teams in the NFC and give themselves the best chance to actually make it to a Super Bowl, I believe that this defense does need to be top 5, still needs to be the anchor of the team. I remember when we talked last offseason, Jack. We thought it was going to be more even keel, where sometimes the defense carried the team to a victory, sometimes the offense carried the team to the victory. I would say, I don't have the facts to back me up, but this is more feelings over facts. At least from my visual and my memory, it seemed like the defense carried this team a lot more than the offense last season. And I would imagine that it would be very similar this year as well. And the good news is I think they have all the capability to do it as well. I think they have the right pieces in place. I think that their cornerbacks have gotten better. I think another year of D'Amico Ryans and his ability to not make the same mistake twice, his ability to be open to looking at himself in the mirror and saying, I'm doing a bad job here, and making wholesale changes to fix that, I think is going to bode well for the team. And so I do believe they need to be top 5. I do think they could also accomplish that, Jack.
Yeah, I think they do need to be the top 5, and I'm basing this off of just some historical numbers, really, not just last year, but in the 49ers history. When they've won the Super Bowl, they've pretty much top 5 defense when they've won a Super Bowl. If you go back and you look at it, their first 2 Super Bowls, they were second in 81, first in 82 and 84 in points allowed. In 88, they dropped down. They were 8th. That's actually the worst they've ever been in one of the years that they've won the Super Bowl. But as bad as that number was, even though it's still top 10, that 8th was actually, a little not that was a season in 88 which had a lot of ups and downs. So they had a lot of downs early on, and they found their footing about midway through the year. And from, I believe it was like week 11 on, somewhere around there, if I went back and looked at the numbers, I'd have it exact. But they were actually giving up fewer points than the team that finished number 1 in the NFL that season through the playoffs. I mean, they were dominant on defense from the win over Washington through the Super Bowl that year. They were giving up like less than 14 points a game. I mean, they were a dominant defense at that point. So it really partly depends on, do they need to be a top 5 defense in order to get to the playoffs? No, but I think once they get there, they need to be playing at that level in order to get the win, right? In order to get to the Super Bowl, win the Super Bowl, they need to be playing at that level. We saw that from the Rams last year. That was a big part of the reason why they won the Super Bowl, was because of their defensive front, defense in general, being able to shut teams down and hold them under 24 points. And if the 49ers can do that, I believe they win the Super Bowl this year, if they can do that throughout the year.
Yeah, and I mean, even I think if we were to take when that win streak started happening, even for the team last season, Jack, the defense, I think if you just focused on, that 8-10 game streak where they went 8-2 or whatever the case may be to get into and clinch a playoff spot or whatnot, I believe if you were to just look at what the defense was allowing at that point, their ranking would be even better than that 9th place, right? Because a few of those games in the first half of the season, obviously they were allowing teams to put up a lot more, but when the defense buckled down, especially that, move to put Armstead in the middle, I think that really changed a lot of things. But they were consistently holding teams to under 21 points. And I don't know where that would rank them as far as on the list of points, but I would say it would probably be better than top 9. And I would put my money that it would have probably been top 5 as far as points allowed if we just focused on that win streak. So I do think they do need to do that if they're looking to have the type of success that we're talking about, not just make the playoffs, but be a real threat to win a Super Bowl.
No, you're 100% correct on that. They gave up 17, 10, and 20 in the playoffs. There was no excuse for them not to be in the Super Bowl last year with the way that defense is playing. If the quarterback just makes a couple of throws, they're in the big game. Right. So I agree with you. They have the ability. I think they took that defense and they've improved it. I know that they lost DJ Jones, and so like we've talked about that so much, the run defense might not be quite as good, but that pass defense I think is going to be better. And that kind of leads us into the next question that we had discussed, and that was do the 49ers need to create more turnovers in order to get to the Super Bowl this year and win it?
Yeah, Jack, I actually, was on my show last night with Rohan talking about the same topic. And I mean, it would be nice, but I don't know if they need to. And the reason why, Jack, is because I don't know if their lack of creating more turnovers is a product of the defense not being what's it called, capable or like wanting that. I think it's just a product of how teams play when it comes to this 49ers team because they're so good with the front four. I do believe that teams just get the ball out quicker and throw a lot more short, safe passes, and they don't take as many risks when it comes to this 49ers defense. And that makes it a lot tougher to be able to create turnovers, at least interception wise, right? Most of these 49er turnovers are forced fumbles from the secondary or from the linebacking core, which seems to be where they have the most opportunity because people are get the ball very, very quickly. Very, very quick. The quarterback's getting it out of their hands to a receiver, to a running back. So the only chance you have at that point is to knock the ball out, force a fumble, and the team does pretty decent with that. I just don't see how, especially now where they even got better corners than they've had in previous years. I don't imagine this team is going to have quarterbacks that try to take too many chances on this secondary. So I don't know if they're going to be able to create more interceptions. So overall, I don't know if they need to create more turnovers just because they haven't in the past and they've still been able to play, in my opinion, well enough to be a Super Bowl team.
Yeah, and I'm going to pull up this comment really quick here from Quinn. He kind of hits on really what my answer is going to be for this. I do believe they need to have some turnovers, maybe a couple more than what they had last year, so there needs to be some improvement there. The 49ers' biggest issue is they need to improve their play on special teams. They need to improve their field position, whether that's through better special teams play or whether that's through creating turnovers. They just cannot have their offense, I don't think, starting having the fourth worst starting field position in the NFL. And I think a big part of that last year was a defense that was bend but don't break and allowed teams to drive down the field on them pretty routinely, which I think speaks to the personnel piece of this. The 49ers last year, especially in the second half of the season, really throughout, once Jason Verrett went down, they didn't have the ability to really play tight coverage in the secondary, and so that in part helped the opposition do what you're saying, which was take advantage of the quick, short, underneath passes. I think with the addition of Travarius Ward, there's the personnel change. I think the addition of Travarius Ward, who is very good at man coverage, allows the 49ers to play tighter coverage, which means that those short passes aren't going to be there quite as much, and they might have to take some more shots down the field or take some more risks on throws. Or the other piece would be that the quarterback's going to have to hold on to the ball for an extra second, which allows your pass rush to get there. And through that pass rush, you're getting hits on the quarterback, which creates fumbles. And then on top of that, maybe some tighter window throws that could possibly lead to tipped balls that other people are picking off. And so I feel like it's either going to have to come through special teams or turnovers for the 49ers to get better field position, which in turn will allow them to get to the Super Bowl and win it.
Yeah, and I mean, I do think that the next iteration of what DeMeco Ryans brings to the team, because where you said, I do agree with you as far as the field position. I mean, obviously the stats prove that, but I don't know if the 49ers defense was necessarily bend, don't break with DeMeco Ryans at the helm. I think that was more of a Robert Saleh philosophy where the defense couldn't get off the field, Jack. And once again, this is feelings over facts. You might be able to, you could probably bring the facts, but it seemed like it was more penalties, especially in the secondary on those third down plays where they could get the team off the field. However, they do a holding penalty in the secondary or, a pass interference or, roughing the passer, stuff like that. Because I believe the 49ers had 6 more pass interference penalties than the next team behind them. And so they were just overall just penalized so much. And I think it got tightened up more in the second half of the season where the team had the win streak. But definitely in the beginning of the season, I don't know if it was bend not break more than just mental errors and mistakes that just continue to allow the team that they were playing keep the drive going, which eventually just led to more points, obviously.
Yeah, and I don't have any numbers directly in front of me in terms of that. What I would say, the only thing that I could say there is it was the feeling of it. And I think maybe it was more of the beginning of the season than the end of the year. I'm not sure, but I know for Like in the NFC Championship game, we saw that quite a bit. We saw the Rams move the ball up and down the field on the 49ers in that game.
Right.
The one time they got down to the end down there, they had the nice interception by Jimmy Ward off of a deflection. And you're right, though. The pass interference piece was definitely an issue for the 49ers in the first half of the year, and they were able to correct that. So we'll see. I felt like at least in the first half of the year, there was definitely a lot more bend but don't break. We saw them do a pretty good job against Dallas. They did a pretty good job against Green Bay. They'd struggled against a pretty potent Rams team that had a really good quarterback, and probably the quarterback at that point was playing one of the best in the league.
Right. Before we move on, Jack, I want to get your idea. So with DeMeco going into second year, as well as what you see with the personnel with this defense, one, do you believe they could be a top 5 defense? And then when it comes to the turnovers, do you see an avenue as where this team can create more turnovers based off of the personnel? I think you kind of answered that second one, but I wanted to get your take specifically on that first one.
I think they have the potential to be a top 5 defense if they can stay healthy and play like they did over the second half of last year with a little bit tighter coverage on the back end. I think that's going to help out the rush. So, I think that they have the ability to be a top 5. It might be a little bit of a struggle for them to do that during the regular season. When you factor in that they're playing Kansas City and Los Angeles Chargers and I don't know about
everybody over there.
But the AFC West is pretty loaded when it comes to talent at quarterback position. So I could see that being a little bit of an issue. Maybe not top 5 because of that, but I think as the season wears on and they're not playing those teams, I think they could get better.
Right.
And I just feel like the tighter coverage is going to help that pass rush get home, which is going to create some of those turnovers.
Yeah, and I hope DeMeco actually does that, because one thing that I like about DeMeco is he's not afraid to blitz. He puts together some pretty cool packages when it comes to blitzing. And especially if he could have corners that he could just trust to play man, that just gives him even more ammunition to bring some of these linebackers or, mix it up a little bit, which I think will help the defense overall.
Yeah, absolutely. And then real quick, before we move on, I just want to shout out a couple of folks. Raphael 5629ers, he says, "What's up, Jack, Suneil, and everyone? Good to have you in, Raphael. You see all the time. It's good to have you." And then also Charles Thurman, he says, "Hello, Jack. Hey, Charles. Say hi to Suneil, too. He's with me." I'm kidding. Good to have you along, Charles. Definitely fun. Make sure you guys hit that like button and the subscribe button as well, so we can continue to grow the show, especially that subscribe button helps out quite a bit, and the like button helps for when it comes to the algorithms that they have. Let's switch gears and go over to the offensive side of the ball.
Sure.
Does the 49ers run game need to be top 3?
Yeah, once again, we go back to where the team, at least this regime's team, had the most success, and that was 2019. And 2019, Jack, they actually finished second, right behind Baltimore. I think they were averaging about 140 yards per game. Forget what they averaged last season, but I think they finished off like 7th as far as the rushing attack. And this team being top 3, I think, shows that this offense is at its optimum level. So when I think, does this running game need to be top 3? I say yes, because that means that this offense is doing everything that Kyle Shanahan is asking from the offense, as far as being a run-first team, and then giving Trey Lance the opportunity to do what he does best, which is the play-action pass. And so if this team is going to be a Super Bowl contender, I believe that all of that needs to come true, which means that this running game will be a top 3 rushing attack. I do hope that it's not just – I hope that the running game is different from last year, Jack, in the sense that I don't want – even though I love Elijah Mitchell, he's obviously our RB1, and he's really good at protecting the ball. Obviously, he didn't drop the ball at all last season. I just think the load on him is a lot. And I really liked it better when they had that fresh back, like three-headed monster with Coleman, Breida, and Mostert. And I hope that they could get back to more of that versus just Mitchell getting 20-plus touches a game. Like what was happening. So I hope Kyle Shanahan trusts his running back room a little bit more. Hopefully Wilson Jr. is a year healthier, so maybe he could get some of that explosion back that we weren't seeing from last year. And I really hope this is the year that Trey Sermon really gets a shot, or we get to see what he's capable of. Obviously, they traded up to get him in the third round. I think he could be really good, and he showed flashes last season. Hopefully, he does everything Kyle Shanahan asks of him so he could get more play. And I think that if we have a rotation of Mitchell, Sermon, Wilson in there, and then obviously with what Deebo's doing and Lance also being a threat with his legs, this has to be a top 3 rushing attack if everything's firing on all cylinders.
Yeah, I agree with you that they need to have more than just Elijah Mitchell. They can't. I don't think they can run him into the ground quite as much as they did last year. If they could keep him to around 15 touches a game in terms of carries and offset that with some running by Trey Sermon this year, which I think was part of their goal last year. It just didn't work out. But if they can go with Sermon or Mitchell and Sermon as their top 2, and then sprinkle in JaMychal Hasty a little bit here or there, if it is JaMychal Hasty or a rookie that's able to take his place, or even Jeff Wilson Jr., I think it would be good for this team. Do they need to be a top 3 rushing attack to win the Super Bowl? If you look back at Kyle Shanahan's history, when he went to the Super Bowl in 2016, the Falcons were 5th in yards per attempt and yards total rushing. They didn't win the Super Bowl though, right? And then the same thing in 2019, they were 2nd in yards total and they were 9th in yards per attempt. Last year, they dropped to 16th in yards per attempt and 7th overall. So, in order to win the Super Bowl, that they might need a little bit of that to help to reduce the amount of time the defense is on the field. I think that's the big piece of it, right? Is just to keep that defense on the sideline is really your best defense. Other than that, I think Trey Lance helps them not necessarily need to be such a strong running game because I think his ability to get the ball down the field creates that. It makes it so that they have a more explosive passing game than we've seen them have in the last 5 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, obviously, I think that is a product of it. I just feel like his passing game will be better if this rushing attack is, what it can be, because Trey Lance is great at play action. Like, he is really, really good at that play action. I think that his strength is coming off of the play action, especially if you could roll him out, bootlegs, all that kind of stuff. So I do think that the only way that happens is if this rushing attack is something that teams are afraid of, to give him the opportunity to really fall into that play action. So that's what I'm saying. And a lot of guys are in the comment section, Jack, are talking about it's all going to depend on the offensive line. And I do think that is somewhat of a truth, because definitely last year when McGlinchey went down, the offense very much so skewed towards running to the left behind Tomlinson and Williams. It was pretty blatant. So the ability to run to the left, run to the right, and even down the middle so often, I think is going to be key if they're going to get back to, a top 3 rushing attack, because that's what they were able to do in 2019. So that is, I think, even though both of us are kind of more on the line of, don't trip too much about the offensive line, they'll be fine. I do think that is a fair criticism, that they have to be able to evenly run behind the right tackle as much as they run behind the left tackle. So that is to be said. If that happens, then I think they can and will be a top 3 rushing attack.
Yeah, I think Lance is going to help them out in terms of the stress that he puts on the defense, either with his running ability and with his passing ability. If he's able to come out and throw the ball the way that most expect him to, that's going to open up things in the running game, because they're not going to be able to play their safeties at 10 yards off the line of scrimmage. They're going to have to sit those guys back. They're not going to be able to play 8 guys in the box, 8 or 9 guys in the box at times, because of his ability to come off of play action and beat them deep, which we haven't seen from the 49ers. They just haven't had that since Kyle Shanahan showed up in San Francisco. And they're going to have that this year, I think, with Lance. So, that was the title of our show, kind of just jumping into it before we get into some of these other ones. Since we're talking about Lance now, let's just go ahead and take a look at it. What do you think, Trey Lance? What are the numbers that you would expect to see from Trey Lance here in 2022?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously we've only seen him start twice, one was against Arizona, and one was against Houston. And it was definitely two different quarterbacks, to say the least. I don't know how much you could put on Trey or how much would be the play calling. But I believe he's going to be more like the Houston version than the Arizona version. And so I would expect, something around, and I don't know what the numbers are across the board as far as like totals, but I don't expect him to be somebody who's throwing the ball 30 plus times a game. I think he'll fall into that 25 to 28 attempts per game type thing on average. But I would imagine his numbers per game would be somewhere around 220 to 250 yards with, two total touchdowns, whether that be with his arm or rushing, maybe like about 30 yards rushing per game on average. And, at the end of the season, I think if he's throwing something around, like 30 touchdowns and, 12 interceptions, that seems about right where I think he would be based off of just there being a 17-game season and just what I think he's capable of doing.
Yeah. So the way that I did this is I just kept it at the same number of passes we saw the 49ers throw last year. So I'm going to base it off of if the 49ers continue to throw at a rate of about 514 passes, which is a little under 30 per game, which is like you said. I think that's a fair amount for him. I think that we're going to see him around 4,300 yards passing, which would be a big step up for the 49ers. I think we see 36 touchdowns. I'm not even getting to his running. I'm just talking about his passing. 36 touchdowns through the air with 14 interceptions. So, we're looking at those numbers would be over two touchdowns a game, under one interception a game. I think those numbers would be pretty darn good for Trey Lance and for this 49ers offense.
Yeah, I don't think we're too far off. I think those are very reasonable numbers, especially with the way the offense, the league has changed, right? You're going to have these games where he needs to air it out. And especially when you're playing the AFC West, that's, those games are going to be exciting because, that we know that the teams that are coming in are going to be all offense, more offense than defense. Well, those defenses are pretty good too, but those are going to be games where probably you have to outscore the opponent versus, hold the team, depend on the defense keeping those scores. So I think that those games are going to be fun because maybe Trey Lance gets more of a leeway to just air the ball out. And you can definitely see those type of big games from Trey. And hopefully we get to see a lot of them. That'd be exciting.
Yeah, I expect to see some good things from him. One of the things that I saw yesterday, and I included an article today, a little bit different spin on it though, was Trey Lance had only 71 attempts last year. He had three of those 71 attempts went for over 40 yards. Compared to Jimmy Garoppolo, who had only 8 and 441 of them.
Right.
And what's interesting about those three is that 2 of them were touchdowns to Deebo Samuel. On 40 of those 40 plus yarders were to Deebo Samuel. The other one was to Brandon Ayuk against Houston. So two big scores to Ayuk, one to
2 to Deebo, 1 to Ayuk.
Thank you for correcting me. 40 plus yard touchdowns to Deebo Samuel and 1 to Brandon Ayuk. I think 49ers are going to be looking pretty good heading into 2022 with Lance at quarterback.
Yeah. Hopefully Deebo comes back.
And then there you go. Thank you for the nice little segue there.
Right.
Are the 49ers really trading Deebo Samuel? Are they really sitting there thinking that might be an option?
Look, as far as are they sitting there thinking that might be an option, I don't see how it can't be an option, right? Because Kyle Shanahan, I mean, you put up the quote. Kyle Shanahan said, if there's a good enough offer, they should trade Kyle Shanahan. If there's a good enough offer to anybody's tradable, right? Whether or not are they really doing it? So I actually came out right when everything happened, Jack, and I kind of put it out there that I think Deebo doesn't come back. I think that he does get traded because I didn't see how the numbers were going to come anywhere close to what the 49ers are willing to pay. Because even though they've made players the highest paid at their position, like this regime isn't afraid of doing that. They do it on their own terms. And those terms are the guaranteed money isn't ever as high as maybe the contract looks, right? So even though they, it starts, they made Jimmy the highest paid quarterback at that time. I think they offered him like 48 million guaranteed, and they haven't let any other player, even though they've made them the highest paid, they've never guaranteed more than that 48 million. So even come close. I think Trent was the closest, and I think he was around like 40 to 45. So what Deebo's looking for, it seems like it's not in my mind, because I just heard Tyreek Hill just got 70 million guaranteed, and then you saw what Devontae Adams did, and the Stephon Diggs. I was like, well, Deebo needs 72, 75 million guaranteed. And I just don't see the 49ers ever getting close to that for a wide receiver. So in my mind, I thought for sure he's gone, because there's no way Deebo was going to come off that number. And I just didn't think the 49ers would ever go up to that number. But then Lombardi actually put up that figure, that's meme or whatever, that what he broke down what the actual guaranteed money was. And it seemed like most of those deals were 40 million or 45 million, like guaranteed. So when I saw those numbers, it made me feel a little more confident that maybe I was wrong, and I want to be wrong because I want Deebo back on the team. But that maybe I will be wrong, and the 49ers could do something where maybe they guarantee him like 50 million, which I think they eventually have to get up to those type of numbers now that everything's moving up. And maybe Deebo would be happy with that if they could make, the incentives and everything, much higher. So that's kind of where I fall, man. It really depends on what Deebo is willing to take as far as the guarantees. If he's going to stick tight to needing 60, 70 million guaranteed, I do think he gets traded. But if he's going to be settled for something between 45 and 50 million, I think that the 49ers would go up to that for the type of impact Deebo has.
Yeah, so I'm gonna start off my response on this one as far as the 49ers trading Deebo. I think, that goes back to some of the comments that we saw yesterday. There was an article that came out talking about the 49ers being willing to trade Deebo Samuel if the price is right, kind of thing. And that all goes back to a comment that Shanahan made, like you said, end of March of last year, when he was asked about trading Jimmy Garoppolo, and he said it's accurate with every player on our team. I mean, probably including myself. If someone blows us away with the trade, for me, I bet you John would trade me. I mean, definitely. And I think this is a quote that I think it's taken out of context a little bit. Of course, they would be open to trading anybody, but I think he was also kind of saying it somewhat as a joke. When you hear him say the words, it's kind of meant as a ha 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 kind of thing. And the other piece that you mentioned, I'm going to just stick with the trading him. I'm not going to get into the money part yet for Samuel, but when you talk about trading him, the 49ers have kept all their top guys with the exception of DeForest Buckner. So that's why you're able to have that discussion and even have the debate and say, well, they did it with DeForest Buckner. Why would they not do it with Deebo Samuel? The difference is that with DeForest Buckner, they had a replacement in place in a way in Eric Armstead.
They made a choice. They made a choice between, yeah.
Yeah, they had two guys that were of similar ability. The 49ers don't have anybody on the roster at wide receiver that brings them what Deebo Samuel brings them. So if they feel like that's the direction that they're going to go, and they do decide that they're going to trade him, it's a huge mistake, in my opinion. So I don't think the 49ers should trade him unless they just get completely, like they said, completely blown away, which to me is multiple first-round picks and maybe even a second and a couple of other, on top of that. Because Deebo Samuel right now, he's a guy who during the scouting combine, one of the things that you heard mentioned repeatedly was how teams are looking to find the next Deebo Samuel. Well, the 49ers have Deebo Samuel, so why would they give him away to somebody else?
Right.
For the hope that they're going to find the next one. So,
but what numbers make sense for you, Jack? Like, because it clearly, and here's the thing that I'm coming from. Shanahan.
Real quick, are you asking me about the from a dollar and cent standpoint for Deebo Samuel?
Well, here's the thing. Like Lynch basically stated in the exit interviews that they have already budgeted towards a Deebo extension, right? So there obviously is a number that the 49ers already had in their mind that they're willing to pay. The fact that it got to the point where Deebo is scrubbing his Instagram makes me feel like those numbers are very far off. Not like, because if it was anywhere close, I don't think Deebo does the extreme that he did, right? Regardless of if you want to say immaturity, whatever it is, I don't think he takes it to that extreme if they were in the same ballpark. So to me, that's just they're not in the same ballpark. So how high should the 49ers go, especially if you believe the article or the report that he's looking to be the highest uh, non-quarterback paid? Like, what number would you go to feel comfortable with?
Perfect. So we're transitioning to the next topic. Is Deebo worth the top non-quarterback money? I say absolutely. I look at the contract that Tyreek Hill got from Miami, and I don't see any reason why the 49ers shouldn't do that deal with if uh, Deebo Samuel is willing to take that. And here's why. The money works for the 49ers. It works in their advantage. Uh, I felt all along that Deebo Samuel is a guy who's worth 22 to 25 million, I think is what I've been saying pretty much all offseason when asked this question. When you look at what I understand what the contract shows for Tyreek Hill, but when you really dig into it, it's really team friendly for Miami. Um, it's the first 4 years of that contract averaged less than $23 million a year against the salary cap. The 49ers can totally make that work, considering that they have a quarterback that's going to on the rookie contract. So um, when you look at that contract, it's 52.5 million guaranteed uh, over the first 2 years. It's a 25+ million signing bonus plus his salaries in year 1 and 2, along with a roster bonus in year 2, something like along those lines. The 49ers can do that. The 49ers should do that. He's worth it. I know people in the comment section aren't going to agree with me. I don't have them. I'm not looking at them right now. But Deebo Samuel is absolutely worth the top money. He is. I'd rather pay Deebo Samuel that money than Tyreek Hill or Devontae Adams. Let's just put it that way.
Now, as far as like, because I think the one thing about Tyreek Hill's, and maybe I'm wrong because I haven't looked at it, but I read somewhere that somewhere in year 2 or year 3, his contract becomes fully guaranteed. So you're saying that that's not the case, but I thought that was like the caveat is that if he's still on the team, I think after year 2, so going into his 3rd year, that 120 million is fully guaranteed. Is that not accurate?
That's not accurate. It's only the 52.5 that's fully guaranteed. And then the way that they structured that is, he's not going to get to that contract in year 5. They're going to either restructure it or do something, because there's no way they're going to give him a $46 million signing, salary cap number in whatever year that is, year 5 of that contract. I don't know. Was that 2027? Something like that?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Well, yeah, I mean, and that kind of sits well with what I'm saying is like, I do think that 45, 50 million is, the 49ers have to be okay with that because they can't keep using the 48 million for Jimmy G as the ceiling, because that was 48 million 5 years ago, right? For a quarterback. So now all of that guaranteed money is getting higher and higher. So yeah, I mean, I've come out and said I think that Deebo's gone, but I don't want that to be true. I would love to be wrong and everybody rub it in my face that I was wrong. That's what would be ideal. But I just know that, I don't know. I just feel like this is something that's so easy to get done, Jack. I don't even understand why it's taking this long, right? And especially with the 49ers, I know, hey, they usually wait till training camp and all that kind of stuff, but this is a different situation. The receiver market is getting reset every single time. There's way more competition, way more contracts still to be paid out around the league. I just don't understand why they know they're going to have to, they know they have to extend Deebo. They know they want to keep Deebo. Why not just get it done? Like, what is the holdup?
It just takes a little bit of time for them to get that done. I think the other piece that gets thrown around is the Stephon Diggs contract. People look at that one, and they're talking about, because that's the one I think that you're getting at, where it's like $70 million of guaranteed money. The Stephon Diggs one's a little bit different than what you're seeing with the 40 with. Even it's different than even what it was reported, because the Stephon Diggs, they came out and they said it was 90 guaranteed, uh, all those kind of things. Some of those guarantees though are the part of those guarantees is actually based on roster. He's got to be on the roster at certain points. So, for example, for he's got a $47 million signing bonus, or 40. Excuse me. Let me step back. Stephon Diggs had 47.985 guaranteed at signing, right? Which is a signing bonus, his salary in 22 and his salary in 23. He has an option bonus in 23 as well. So 47.985 was guaranteed at signing. When you look at the full guarantees, he has a salary that guarantees in 2024, which is $18.5 million. Even that's, not that bad. It's still only 26. When you start to look at the numbers, it's these guys, the Stephon Diggs deal, even with all that guaranteed money, his highest cap hit is going to be $27 million in 2026 when the cap is way higher than it is now. I don't know. I just look at these numbers and I understand that people are freaking out about them. The 49ers are in a position right now where they can make it work.
But why? So how does it get so ridiculous then? Like, I don't know. Like Deebo, to me, the way he scrubbed, and this is like my point, Jack. Like with people talk about Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray took everything off of his Instagram and then replaced it with a couple of pictures. Deebo didn't take everything off of his Instagram. His Instagram was still intact. There are still pictures of there, all that kind of stuff. He went one by one and took off the pictures. Like, I don't know if you use Instagram, Jack, but you literally have to click the button, delete, and then click the button, delete. So he went one by one, and he had a lot of 49ers stuff on that Instagram at first. So to me, that's a different level of petty. That's a different, like, you have to have an emotional reaction to just have the time to do something like that. So to me, something in those negotiations where he was like, this doesn't feel fair. And that's where I'm kind of wondering, like, how far off are these numbers? Because when you're saying it makes a lot of sense. You would think that the 49ers, it would make a lot of sense. My thing is maybe Deebo's asking for much more than the 49ers are willing to give. I don't know.
What I would say is, some of the things that I've heard be thrown out there. If I was Deebo Samuel, I would have scrubbed my Instagram too. When you hear like Peter King come out with the comments that he made about, Deebo Samuel over the last 2 years has only, averaged 890 something yards or whatever. Peter King's the guy who's tied in with the 49ers brass. He was in the draft room in 2017, I believe it was. So he knows what's going on. He's a mouthpiece for the 49ers organization more so than some of these other guys. You just can, and if that was one of them, the other one I heard was, I don't remember who it was from, but they're talking about maybe the 49ers are trying to use him as his running back numbers against him kind of thing. And again, if I'm Deebo Samuel and that's the stuff that they're using against me, I'd be pissed off too, because I think it's I think that's garbage, especially when you talk about the only reason he was playing running back at that point was because he could do it, and he was helping the team.
Right. And he got his Pro Bowl as a wide receiver. He didn't get a Pro Bowl as a running back.
Hey, if they had just let him play running back and just continued to use him as a wide receiver, if they just kept him a wide receiver and just let him finish off the season as a wide receiver, he would have had one of the best receiving seasons in the history of the 49ers. If his numbers had just continued along the same path that they were on. The only reason his numbers dropped is because his targets dropped. His catch rate and all that kind of stuff remained about the same, but he started getting less targets because they were trying to manage his number of touches. So yeah, I'm on Deebo Samuel's side with this one 100%, thinking that he's worth the top quarterback money, and if the 49ers are messing around with him, he's well within his rights to continue to press on with what he's doing. I
agree. I think that if he's gonna get paid what he wants, whether or not it's the 49ers is up to the 49ers that pay him.
Yeah, that's 100%. Exactly. That's been my point along this too. Now, speaking about Deebo Samuel, and this will be our last topic for the night, and we're saving the best for last. We already did the Trey Lance one, but I got to ask you this one. Better 49ers receiver. We're not talking about career now. We're talking about the better 49ers receiver. Terrell Owens or Deebo Samuel?
All right. So I pulled up some numbers quick when you told me about this topic first, because obviously this is it's hard because we've had the full breadth of TO as a 49er, and we've only had 3 years of Deebo, right? So I was like, all right, well, let me look at the first 3 years of TO, so I'm not just going off of nostalgia, so I could kind of like go off of like really what we're seeing. Because let me tell you straight out, I'm a big TO fan and I'm a big Deebo fan. So this one's tugs at my heartstrings, Jack. So the first, and I'm just gonna go over passing numbers. So rookie year for To, he had 520 total yards receiving. Sophomore year, 936 yards receiving, and in his third year, 1,097. Deebo stats: rookie season, 802 yards. So he actually had more passing yards in his rookie season than To did. His second year, obviously, he had the foot injury. He had 391 yards. And then his third year, which was his last season, 1405. So 1,405 yards. And that's not even mentioning the rushing touchdowns and all that type of stuff. Mm-hmm. So just based off of the numbers, now, and clearly we got to say, okay, the league has changed. Obviously, if To was playing in this type, I'm sure his numbers would be higher as well. But for me, I got to say Deebo. And that's hard because I'm a big To fan. But just for what, especially with what Kyle Shanahan brings as a play caller, having a Deebo Samuel there, I think is the perfect receiver for this type of style of offense. He could run the ball. He could catch the ball. He has yards after catch. Sure hands, all those types of things. I think as a pure receiver, obviously you got to give the nod to To. But for the 49ers right now, with the system that they run, with the coach that they have, I think Deebo is a better fit, and to me makes him the better receiver because I think he'll have better stats as long as he stays healthy.
It's funny because I know you talked about it's a little bit different era. That's one of the arguments, because I threw this out there yesterday that I feel like Deebo Samuel is the second best 49ers receiver I've ever seen play. And I've been watching the team for 42 years, so the only guy he's behind, in my opinion,
Brandon Lloyd.
So far, yeah, right. Brandon Lloyd had some amazing catches, boy. I'll tell you that.
JJ Stokes, I got
and
you.
That's not even. No, what are you talking about? Hani Uwezike. That's who I'm. No, but he's only behind Jerry Rice, in my opinion. And I, you got to remember, this guy played with Steve Young, right? And talking about Terrell Owens. Yeah, he had Jerry Rice on the other side taking away some of his targets and those kind of things.
But he's single covered because they're double covering.
Because they got Rice on the other side, right? Mm-hmm. So over their first 3 seasons, Owens actually has more targets than Deebo Samuel. 265 targets for Owens, 246 for Samuel. Samuel has 167 receptions for 2,598 yards. Owens, 162 for 2,558. So through 3 seasons, Deebo Samuel's better. I think the answer as they move forward, I think it's going to become even more. Those numbers are going to become more widespread, partly because you're going to have Trey Lance starting to throw the ball to, like we talked about earlier, Trey Lance throwing the ball to Deebo Samuel, and he's not going to have to be catching the ball around the line of scrimmage so much. I mean, shoot, when you go back and you look at what Deebo Samuel did for the 49ers in 2020, what'd you say he was? 310 receiving yards, I think you said?
Yeah.
And so he had 310 receiving yards, but he had like 390 yards after catch because he was having to catch the ball behind the line of scrimmage so much. So I think, on this one, Samuel's numbers are going to continue to grow. And, I understand that Terrell Owens is in the Hall of Fame. Terrell Owens, his best seasons with the 49ers, he had 2 in which he was at over 1,400 yards. 2 times in his career as a 49er, he went over 1,400 yards. Deebo Samuel in year 3 did it. Mm-hmm. And Deebo Samuel did it with only 122 targets. When Terrell Owens was doing that, he was at around 150 to 160 targets. So he was getting the ball thrown to him way more often than Deebo Samuel. And so, I look forward to seeing this. I look forward to coming back to this conversation in 5 years, because I'm pretty sure that if Deebo Samuel is with the team through 8 years, everybody's going to realize that what I'm saying isn't as crazy as it might sound.
I don't think it sounds crazy at all. I think if anybody is just looking at the numbers and then seeing also the impact, because the year that Deebo just had, Jack, I don't think T.O. ever was as important to the 49ers as Deebo was last season to the 49ers. And that's not taking away from T.O. That's just elevating how important Deebo was. So, to put up, so Deebo had a year where he had more yards, receiving yards than some of the most elite receivers in the league, including some of these guys that got broken off big money this offseason. Deebo actually had more receiving yards than they did this last season, and he had more rushing touchdowns than some of the most elite running backs this season. So to be able to do that and have that in one player, it's just something that you might not be able to see again. It's kind of like the epitome of it's kind of like Russell Westbrook having averaging a triple double for a season, right? I would put it on that type of level, the type of year that Deebo had, as far as the yards as far as his pass receiving yards, as well as rushing touchdowns. So I don't think T.O. ever had that much of an impact, as big of an impact. And T.O. was wide receiver one for the 49ers and their best player a lot of those years as far as receiver wise. So yeah, to me, it's not even an argument.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that because I didn't even think about that. But yeah, when in 2000, that was the big year for Terrell Owens. That was the most that he had at 1,450 yards, receiving yards for the 49ers that year in 2000. And the 49ers finished 6-10. So it wasn't like he was helping to win too many games. That's the whole what is it they talk about? QB wins. Well, that's our wide receiver wins stat for the day.
Right.
I understand. People look at it. He did make the Hall of Fame. He was a stud receiver, and that's what makes these kind of discussions difficult. Is because people know the end product and the end result with Terrell Owens. They don't know the end. This is obviously there's a little bit of a projection when I'm saying that about Deebo Samuel, but as a guy who watched them enough, I pay way too close attention to what goes on with this football team. I'll tell you for 40 plus years. So I just feel like based on what I've seen, that it's Deebo over Owens.
How have you watched this team for 40 plus years when you're 34 years old, Jack? How does that make sense?
I had. Well, it's Shoot, I wish I was 34.
You look at my guy.
I gotta have you talk to my girlfriend because she doesn't believe. I tell her that. I try to sell that all the time. She doesn't believe it.
Man, I don't say nothing about girlfriends, man. I'm gonna keep my mouth shut. I don't want to get involved in that. I don't want to get involved in that one, bro.
Yeah. Well, no, it's okay. But yeah, no, it was a good show. I think I'm surprised that you came out on the Deebo Samuel side of that. I wish I hadn't given you the heads up that we were going to ask that question before. I would like to see.
I'm a big look. I know a lot of people are coming at me because I'm pretty adamant that I think Deebo might not be a 49er next season, but that has no indication of my love for Deebo. He is one of my favorite players on the team, and I want him to be there. I just know that the 49ers don't like upping that guaranteed money. So that's the only reason why I think that might be the case. So we'll see.
Yeah, no, we'll see how it works out. I think it'll be I'm really looking forward to this season to see how this all breaks down. The 49ers tomorrow, they have their local pro day is being held in Santa Clara tomorrow. So a bunch of the college prospects from the area will be in Santa Clara working out for the team. And then, it's not too far off. We got the draft coming up, and this team I think is going to be coming together pretty nicely over the next few months. This Deebo Samuel thing is going to be driving the narrative for quite a while, and of course Jimmy Garoppolo is still around too. So at some point we might have to talk about the possibility of him starting for the 49ers next year.
Never again.
I'm kidding.
Never again. I'm speaking about that topic.
Yeah, you will. I'll bring it up, and you'll jump on it. I know. What's going on over on your channel? I know you said you had Rohan last night. What are some things that you've got going on?
Yeah, I might just be streaming. Going live on my channel a few times here or there, maybe Wednesday and Thursday. But the biggest thing was coming on here with you, Jack. You obviously. I enjoy coming on here a lot, and And also, right after this, I'm going on with Jesse. So, I just went on with the hammer. Now I got to go on with the nail and, and then finish out my Tuesday. So that's what I'm looking forward to right now.
There you go. See, you're a busy man. You got 2 shows today. And so everybody, if you get over to So Real Sports Talk TV, that was in the description for the show today. So make sure you get over there and check it out. If you're not already subscribed to Suneil's channel, go ahead and go do that. While you're here, before you jump off, please go right there like it says, like and subscribe. If you can like this and then subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed, that'd be great. Trying to continue to get this thing. We're close to 4,000. Want to try to push that over here soon. And try to get this thing to 7,000 by the time the season starts. That's the goal. Continue to grow the channel and bring good content to you guys. I shared one of the better comments that I've had recently over on my Twitter page yesterday. So go ahead and take a look at that one if you haven't seen it already. But otherwise, like I said, like, subscribe, get yourself to 49ers.pressdemocrat.com. New article on Deebo Samuel. Imagine that went up today. So thanks again for everybody that tuned in, and thank you, Suneil.
Absolutely. Anytime, Jack.
All right. You guys all have a great night. I will be back tomorrow night I'm trying to make sure that I can get Rob Shue on for the Hammerhead show. We'll see what happens. You might have seen his picture on Twitter. That's the goal was for us to join up together tomorrow, and then I'll be on here Thursday with Jesse Naylor as well. So keep it locked right here to the channel. Thank you all so much for joining, and take care, guys and gals.